If you're facing any kind of big decision on the horizon, especially as it relates to where your business and personal life interacts, this is definitely going to be a video that you want to tune into because I'm talking all about why I almost backed out of selling my 7-figure business and the one reason why I was super glad I did in hindsight. I know not all of you are out there selling a business, but there are many big money transactions that you're going to participate in your life, such as going to school and deciding to take out loans for that, buying a house, selling a business, and I know how permanent those can feel. So in today's video, we're exploring a little bit of what that would look like for you as a business owner and how it can impact your personal life for the better and sometimes worse. Welcome back. I'm Christina Scalera, and on this channel, we talk about all things passive income and building your business. I do this through my 8 years of experience building a d-commerce shop, and d-commerce is a term I came up with myself, and selling that d-commerce shop last year. Now I'm investing in real estate. I'm building another business, actually 2 more businesses, and just generally going about online marketing. So if you like all of those things, then we are going to be fast friends here. Don't forget to go through the holy grail of all things YouTube, which is like, subscribe, share, subscribe. Oh my gosh, all that. I know it's annoying that I'm always saying that, but it really does make such a big difference for the YouTube algorithm if you just do at least one of those things with every video that you watch. This costs a lot of time and money to put together, and that's all I ask for in return. If you haven't seen my videos yet about what it took to sell my online store, I talked about that in detail in other videos on my channel, so I'm not going to go into that here. You can go and watch those. I've covered that very extensively, but there was something that happened that almost stopped me from selling this online store. When I put this business up for sale, I wasn't really sure what to expect. I've never sold any kind of asset that's really super valuable. I've of course, sold lots of products and courses and coaching, retreats, like pretty much anything that a business is known for online, I've sold it, but I've never actually sold the business itself. I had never been a homeowner before, so I had never sold a house. I'd never sold anything of this substantial amount of money. And so I really felt like a lot was on the line in terms of finding the right buyer and just kind of figuring this whole thing out because there's not like a guide out there that walks you through this step by step. One of the things that kind of gave me hesitation was actually how fast people wanted to buy it. Within 2 weeks, I had 2 offers, and then within 3 weeks, I had 3 offers, and 2 of them were really strong. And in fact, it came down to like this very nerve-wracking day where I had to choose between these 2 amazing offers. I was not expecting my business to sell that quickly, but when it finally did come to the closing table, I did want to accelerate that process and make sure things happen in a relatively fast manner, considering that we were approaching the end of 2022 and there were some tax implications if I got paid in different tax years or all in one tax year. So I wanted to make sure that I took all of those things into account. But I remember driving right before I decided to accept one of these offers. And I was actually driving down the road here by my house in Washington, and a song came on the radio. It was the BB Reha song that's like I'm Blue with it's the remix. And I remember being a little girl listening to the original version of that song, like by Eiffel 65. And like all of a sudden, all these memories of like building this business and everything it took to get here, they all came flooding back. And mind you, when you go to sell a business, you have to really outline all of the assets of the business, all of the funnels that you forgot about, all of the email sequences you haven't used in forever that you're like, why did I ever stop using this? So at this time, I was like, why am I selling this? This is such a good business. Like, this is so good. But then I remembered, this is what I've been working towards. I didn't know it would be the exit of this business, but I wanted some kind of big cash event to start investing in more real estate and in more passion projects that I had in the back of my mind. And that's exactly what I've been able to do since selling. But there was a big moment of hesitation before I signed the letter of intent. So that's like kind of the contract that you sign to move towards a closing. Like basically you and the buyer decide like, we are intending to close on this. Now we just have to do due diligence. So it's kind of like if you buy a house, right? Sending the offer, like that's it. As soon as they accept it, there's a lot of things that have to happen still, but like you guys are contractually bound to each other. So that's what I was, driving on my way back home to do when all this like hit me. And it really does come down to that like one moment. Like these huge decisions actually become something very emotional emotional and tangible, and sometimes there's a lot of memories associated with them. So I know it sounds kind of funny, like about a business, to get so emotional and to have so much nostalgia, but I really did when it came to this business. It was my first successful business, and it taught me how to actually create and run and now sell a business. I didn't know any of those things. In fact, I don't think there's any school that you can go to actually learn those things. Like if you go and get an MBA in entrepreneurship, you don't know as much as someone who's actually out there being an entrepreneur. So in a way, it's kind of cool because I spent 8 years like getting paid to learn how to be an entrepreneur and also not paying myself for some of those years. So I guess that was a little bit rough. But when all is said and done, these big emotional decisions, they can really weigh on you until the decision is actually made and one of those final steps is taken. So once I had signed the letter of intent and moved on, like I was good with the decision. I felt really positive. I felt like a weight had been lifted off of my shoulders, basically like, should I make this decision or not? And when I decided it, either way, I think I would have felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders because it was like, okay, the decision is now made. It's like taking a test, right? When you took a test in like high school or something and you maybe like halfway studied for it, and you're like, oh, well, the test is over, nothing I can do now. And you felt so light and free. So no matter how the test went or no matter how this decision went, like it was decided, it was already done. It was out of my control at that point. There was nothing else I could do. And I would say if you have anything like that looming on the horizon, like you're really at a crossroads of a big decision that's about to change your life, there's a couple things that I would ask yourself. The first one is, what is the best case scenario that comes out of making this decision? So if you decide to move forward with something, what's the best case that could happen? I decided that the best case scenario was I get all this money. It's kind of like winning the lottery when you sell your business because now you don't have to run that business, but you have the money from it. And I really, really wanted that to invest in real estate. And that's exactly what I did. I was like, best case scenario, I find a house in my dream location and we buy something there. And that's exactly what we did. And worst case scenario, you have to ask yourself, what if this all goes sideways? What is the worst that could happen to me if I make this decision? And there really weren't very many downsides here because everything was being sold, right? All the assets were being sold off. It was going to allow me to pay off any kind of like outstanding payments to affiliates and any kind of like outstanding loans or any cards that I had open for Black Friday. So there really wasn't a big downside here other than just the emotional, nostalgic part of it. And I had to decide if that was worth it to get rid of this thing that I had been building for 8 years. And part of this decision really came down to defining who I was as a business owner and entrepreneur. So who my identity was in these roles. And I decided that I wanted to be more of a high-level entrepreneur. I wanted to be more of a high-level coach. I wanted to have this skill set and experience in order to guide my clients better and to show them the things that they would need if they ever wanted to be in this position, because I'd never had anyone that did this. I didn't know anyone who had sold the business like this. And I really hadn't had any kind of like mentorship. I just did a lot of research on my own. And obviously I have a law degree. I'm a lawyer. So I was able to understand at least like the letter of intent and contracts and things like that that were involved. Now, sometimes, and I think this is like a recency bias thing, but sometimes when you make a decision, you can start to look for all the confirmations that it was the right decision to make. And that's exactly what started to happen to me. I really held my breath until we closed because I don't take it that like anything is actually going to happen until I have the legal written paper right there in front of my face. So for example, when we closed on both of our properties, the one here in Washington and the one in Colorado, I didn't assume that we had that property, either of them, until we were like handed the keys to the house. All the closing documents were finalized. And in fact, with the Colorado house, the title company, they like forgot some minor thing, like a signature on some piece of paper. And they called me the next week after we had closed and I freaked out because I'm like, this is it. I'm caught. They're going to ask for the house back. Like, that's it. And it was just like literally some tiny signature. But in my head, right, like all this is happening. Probably also why it was a good idea for my doctor to recommend that I try Zoloft out, but that's a different video. So right after I closed on selling the business, we began the process of migrating the business from my ownership and the assets in my control over to the new owner and really teaching that person how to manage and run and grow the business to the best of what I knew about it. And I'm not even kidding, guys. So we closed on November 30th, December 5th. I'll never forget that date. Guess what came out? ChatGPT. So here I was closing this business that literally could really be impacted by AI. I did not know that. I had no clue that AI would take over at such a fast clip or that ChatGPT would be a thing. I didn't even start using ChatGPT until February of this year. But man, once I had sold the business and I saw that happen, I was like, I really am glad that I am no longer at the helm of that business, because I just don't think that I could emotionally take fighting the AI machine of what's about to happen. Now, that's not to say that I don't think the new owner is like not going to be successful. I actually think they are. But for me, after 8 years of like fighting people that tried to be my friend and then ripped me off, and like copycats, and just really taking things very personally in that way, I was not ready to like gear up for battle with a new nemesis. I was done with all of that stuff, the emotional toll that all of those things took on someone who pioneers an industry and then has a lot of people copy them. So I was really ready to step away from that business. And when AI came out like that with ChatGPT, I just was like so thankful that I was no longer at the helm. I think the new owner is much better equipped for that. They're so not emotional or nostalgic about it like I was. And so they're going to make much clearer, much more business focused decisions than like emotional ones like I was making towards the end. So to sum everything up, if you want a neat little checklist of like what you should be thinking about if you have one of these big decisions to make, especially these big decisions that are a high transaction cost. So selling a house is a really big transaction. That's usually the biggest transaction that someone's going to deal with in their life. For me, selling my business was actually the biggest transaction I've ever dealt with yet, even with the 2 houses that I've purchased. It was a big deal. And the things that I went through to make sure that it was the right decision for me was, first of all, what's the best case scenario of what could happen? Second, what's the worst case scenario? If I choose this option, I do decide to sell, or I do decide to go forward with this thing, what's the worst thing that could happen here? And third and finally, what is the emotional cost, and can I bear it? Both ways, good or bad. And I decided in this instance that the emotional toll would just be too high on me. And then that was confirmed like right after selling it through seeing other things that I knew would have impacted my mental health and emotions in running this business as someone who is personally invested and involved in it, not so much as like a CEO or, someone who's a little more removed from the day-to-day operations. As always, I hope this video was helpful. I know it's a little bit of a departure from what I usually talk about on here, but if you did find it interesting, please let me know down in the comments. I would love to hear what you took away from it and what big decisions you have on your horizon so that I can cheer you on. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.